And the number one story just happened days ago. It was the shooting massacre at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. We haven't really spoken about this, Steve, so we're going to, shed some light on it right now. But I remember we were talking the morning it was happening, and it's really beyond description what happened there. Because whenever tragedies like this happen, and there's been, unfortunately, close to 70 shootings, school shootings, I should say, since President Bill Clinton was in office. 70. And so when these things happen, they're obviously all tragic. They're obviously all horrendous. And you can't even imagine what parents and, children go through when these things happen. But this one was just to see, eventually when, the stories evolved and you learned who these children were that were killed, seeing the faces, hearing their names, knowing, as President Obama said, that they had their entire lives ahead of them. It's honestly, you can't even imagine what they're going through, and I can't even really articulate what that means. It's literally this 20-year-old kid who, whatever problems he may have had, he grabbed 3 guns that I can't believe, that you can just legally own in any American home. He grabs these guns, he walks his way to the school, and he just kills innocent children. I don't know what to say about it. It's horrible, and I remember the part of the story was, during the rescue efforts and the emergency part of it, they were taking the children to the firehouse, which was next to the school. And basically the parents were coming to get their children, and they didn't even know if their children were in that firehouse. And basically each set of parents would come to the firehouse and collect their children, and there were parents that were showing up that day who didn't have a reunion. Their children weren't there, and I can't imagine what that feeling was like to, first of all, be driving to a school where a mass shooting has taken place, not even knowing if your child is alive, and then going, searching, looking around the room frantically, and realizing that you're not going to find your child because he was just fatally shot. It's terrible. So it really is beyond description.
Yeah, and as we were watching, the first few hours of coverage there, the chilling details that kept emerging, from the fact that it was at an elementary school to when the details in terms of how many people were killed. And then you learn about the shooter, Adam Lanza, as we had just mentioned, and his family, that he had killed his girlfriend and his mother all in the same day. And then drove to the Sandy Hook Elementary School and opened fire on over 20 young children, all under the age of 7. It's just an absolutely horrific tragedy in every sense of the word. And when you were mentioning what can you say to the parents, that there was an interview on TV about somebody that was at the firehouse when they had the parents of the kids that were not recovered, that were not found alive. And this witness was describing the atmosphere in the room of when the police chief basically reading this list of names in front of 50 or 60 parents of their children that had died, and how unbelievably emotional it was in that room. I just can't even imagine. I can't even imagine being a parent. I can't even imagine being the person that's responsible for reading those names. It's just an awful tragedy in every sense of the word, as I said. As the story has evolved throughout the week, though, it has garnered headlines in terms of what can this story do to affect change in gun law in the States. And really, when we were thinking about what the biggest news story of the year was, we were thinking, well, this just happened, or are we being jaded by, well, this is the most recent news story? But it really was just the most recent and the most horrific example of gun violence tragedies throughout this year. I just made a small list here in 5 seconds. We had the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. Just 2 weeks ago on our podcast, we were talking about the Javon Belcher murder-suicide. There was the Trayvon Martin shooting of the little boy in Florida. There was the Aurora Theater massacre earlier this summer. The Portland shooting just a bit over a week ago. And in Canada here, you remember the Eaton Center shooting that we had this month. earlier this year. So an unbelievable year of these awful tragedies that happened at the hands of guns. And as the details came out about the tragedy, as you said, that this mother was allowed to buy and legally purchase an AR-15 Bushmaster rifle, which is a semi-automatic military-style assault rifle.
And the size of my desk. It's that big.
Unbelievable. And thankfully, it has, not thankfully, but President Obama has stated that he plans on doing something about it. Thankfully, Republicans have agreed to at least a discussion about it. Even the NRA is saying that they will make quote-unquote significant contributions. We'll see to what extent those contributions will be. But clearly, with this most recent mass shooting in Sandy Hook, something needs to change. And obviously there are more complex elements at play here. It's not just guns. There are, I think the debate needs to happen in terms of mental illness and violent video games and the gun culture that exists in the States. But you have to start somewhere. If you try to take on all these things at once, it becomes overwhelming, and then we forget about it, and then nothing ever changes.
Good point.
But yeah. I think what Obama and a lot of the lawmakers are saying is we have to get rid of these assault weapons and these clips that, have more than 100 bullets in them. We have to start there, at least.
You're right, Steve. Obviously, something needs to be done. It's very multifaceted. Everyone's got an opinion. Some great TV in the sense that I know you were watching Piers Morgan a lot this week. Mm-hmm. He was very passionate about gun control and gun violence in this country. Very emotional when he was talking to these people who support gun laws.
Mm. And one of the frustrating things that a lot of the gun supporters will say is it's my Second Amendment right. Well, there are two things about that. The Second Amendment states that you have the right to bear arms. It doesn't say that you have the right to own a semi-automatic assault rifle. A baseball bat could count as arms. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I find it somewhat frustrating that a lot of these constitutionalists hang on to this document like it's the Bible. I mean, not like the Bible is something to hang on to like that either. But this document was written in 1776. And times change. I think the amendments, if anything, show us that they served to amend a flawed document. When the Constitution was written, slavery was legal too, but obviously it's not anymore. Times change, and people sort of wake up to, the awful things that sometimes is happening in the world. And the fact that so many people are clinging to this line in the Constitution that's over 200 years old, I mean, where were the children's rights in all this? Okay, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's fine and great that you have the right to bear arms, but now you've taken away these children's right to live. So I find it frustrating that these people cling to the Constitution so dearly.
And they cling to it, and it's this process, and it's almost like it's just ingrained into this American culture. And in some ways, so many things are ingrained in American culture that it takes so long for these laws and rules to change. But in this case, I really hope that, the conversation not only begins but gets somewhere in the upcoming months, because as Obama said in one of his press conferences a few days ago, I would hope, he said, that our memory is not that short, our attention span is not that small, that we forget about this and don't do anything in about a month's time. Because that's unfair to the families, that's unfair to the children. Honestly, there needs to be significant steps forward with some kind of a change where it limits the amount of deaths. What did we say earlier? That, we're talking about school shootings specifically, but you said murders with a gun, 33 happen a day, did you say, in the States?
Anywhere between 11 and 12,000 gun murders every year, which works out to something like 33 to 35 on average every day. And when you were mentioning that Obama press conference, he went over just from last Friday till when that press conference happened, some of the chilling murders that were included in those numbers. He was talking about 2 police officers that were gunned down. I believe it was in Chicago. There was a police officer, a mother of 4, a single mother police officer that was shot in the line of duty. There were 3 people that were shot in a hospital in Alabama. There was a young 4-year-old boy that was the victim of a drive-by shooting that something happened, but
too many.
Clearly at the wrong place at the wrong time. And so, if anything, this massacre at Sandy Hook hopefully elevates the conversation that some meaningful laws can be changed.
It's crazy. There's just too many examples. It's a laundry list of examples and incidents, and it's pretty sad. We're talking about 12,000 a year for gun murders, right? Or gun incidents. And then you said that wasn't even counting suicides with the gun.
There's another 8,000 to 9,000 suicides every year that are at the hands of guns. So
we're talking
over 20,000 murders every year.
That's
unbelievable.
Not to be insensitive, but that's like a sold-out Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
20,000 people are dying because of guns. Something's got to change.